Hi, good morning, everybody. We're going to do a bit of a role reversal today. I'm Phil Sharrock. I'm a foster carer, and you may have seen my video when Sarah Anderson interviewed me. Now we're going to flip it all on its head today, and I'm going to introduce and interview the founder of Foster Wiki, Sarah Anderson, which you all and I hope you all know well. Now, some of you have been really, really kind enough to send some really interesting questions to Sarah that need to be answered. And I think it's going to be really important that we go to the experts in this matter and get some honest opinions. So how are you, Sarah? Are you okay?
Hi, Phil. Yes, I'm okay. It's a bit different for me being in the hot seat, but
good. Now you know how we all feel.
Yeah, I'm really interested to answer the questions, and yeah, looking forward to it.
Okay. The first question is, what colour is the sky?
Oh, very, very blue down here.
Splendid. Yeah, I'm looking.
And I'm very warm.
I know, it's coming, isn't it? It's coming. I've got a day in a school tomorrow, and I am really not looking forward to it. So, okay, let's crack on with some questions that these lovely people have sent to you. There's one here from Dawn who says, how did you start the chain reaction to change working practices in the beginning? How did you manage to get other carers to join forces? So let's go back in time a little bit. And where did
I basically came into fostering just like everybody else, and we all have our own different routes. I've been working in the NHS in adolescent mental health for a long time, came into fostering, and then suddenly thought, wow, this wasn't what it said on the tin, and started campaigning ever since. How did I start doing it? I started off in my local fostering association until I realized that they were very much part of the local authority, and there wasn't much that you could change at that level. You could maybe raise some smaller issues. So I moved on from there when I saw an advert. It was actually in the Fostering Network magazine for a small union called the IWGB, who was advertising for anyone who wanted to form a branch, a foster care workers branch of that union. And the rest, as they say, is history. I stayed there 3 years until I felt that it was a little untenable. You can look up Foster Wiki, look up the Sarah Anderson page on there, and see my reasons for leaving, and also my journey since. I've been in a couple of other organisations, but I finally settled on Foster Wiki because I felt that there's so little information that carers can access. It's the sort of a control of information as well, because we only get sent what people want to send us, really. Everything in the way of training that we do seems to be from other people's perspective. And I wanted to use this incredible knowledge bank throughout the whole of fostering to empower people through Foster Wiki and the rest of the industry too, so that they could see how it all works on the front line. Campaigning wise, I say, how do I get lots of other foster carers to join? We would like more foster carers to join. We've got our new government approved union, the NUPFC, which is dedicated only to foster carers, approved by the government, certified by the government, but probably not something anybody's really heard about, again, because they stem that flow of information if it's not convenient for them for people to be members of a union. However, it is traditionally really hard to get carers to join in campaigning, and basically because, well, first of all, carers are pretty exhausted most of the time, but they also live in a climate of fear. So, everybody's too afraid to stick their neck up above the parapet. Mine's been up above the parapet so high, I've got pot shots all over me. Yeah. I have a bullseye on my forehead. So, I have to say now that I'm becoming a respected member of the fostering industry, as opposed to just one errant foster carer, because I think the ideas and the issues that we bring are never more relevant than now.
So do you think, those people in power, the MPs, and, do they really understand what we do? Do they, and how can they work more efficiently and better with us? Considering there's just been a care review, what can the MPs do to sort of get more in touch with us?
So basically, it's not their fault because they've been fed the industry narrative for foster care that it's just like little orphan Annie turns up with a ringlets and a pink suitcase and we all live happily ever after. What they don't understand is the level of trauma these children carry. By default, you can't be a child in care and not be carrying trauma, even if it was only the bit where you were removed from a parent, you know, but it's not, as we know, it's an accumulation of acute trauma throughout their lives. And I think that the MPs are fed this sort of line that love will cure all, and that all you need is a loving home and a big heart and a spare room, you know. And you know, I know, foster carers, all of you out there know that it couldn't be further from the truth. It's up to us to educate our own MPs. So write to your MP and say, I don't think you realise what we do. Can I come and see you and explain? Go to a surgery, tell them what we do, tell them the changes that we need. You know, it's really vital that they get that message. I think that they're not, some are sort of sticky, you know, it's not convenient to change the industry as it is at the moment for them. But the majority of MPs, I would say, have no idea about what we do. And until we tell them, they won't.
Okay. I mean, and it was Alison who came up with that question, looking for MPs. And another, just following it up a little bit, that a foster carer from Kent has said, regardless of you chaining yourselves to the Downing Street railings, is there any progress on a sort of central system for carers? Because I know that this is something that you advocate for quite strongly.
So, yes, I do. And because I feel that the key to our, you know, independence, to our security and our protection is to own our own Form F, our own license to foster. And to do that, we need our own registration body, not a register, but that's something quite different, but a body that we are registered with, like the social workers have Social Work England. We could have Foster Work England, you know, where our license is kept, and they do all the disciplinary procedures and the inquiries into bad practice independently from the council or agency a social worker works for. So it makes complete sense. We are seeing, I work as, I'm not affiliated to, but I work as special advisor to the National Foster Carers Union, the NUPFC. And we are having a meeting on Monday, actually, with the Department for Education. For anybody who doesn't know, foster care, it comes within the Department for Education, because I don't think they know where else to put us. I think I've said before, it's not a big department, but we're seeing them and the Assistant Director on Monday. And we're raising the issues of the central licensing body, worker status, and allegations. And also I'll talk to you that if we have time, we are raising the issue now that the cost of living is getting out of control, and foster carers are starting to talk of not being able to afford it anymore. I don't want to be alarmist, but it's that serious for a lot of carers. We can't cut down on things, you know. Yeah,
I know. I brought this up with my IFA. You know, I spoke to the director of my IFA in a sort of in a sort of group meeting, and I was and I sort of laid it out that, you know, our IFA's profits had gone from 1 million to 2 million net. You know, over the course of the last 12 months, and we didn't get a pay rise when their profits went up the year before, and after a very nice letter saying that we were really valued, we were being offered 2.5%, which was as a pay rise this year, which was the national minimum recommendation. And I wanted to explore that with her, and she said she'd be in touch. But
funny that nothing.
Interesting, isn't it? Yeah, still waiting, still hoping. You know, and because it is indefensible, isn't it? And I think that's I think that's something that, you know, they're really going to have to consider, because at the end of the day, you know, yes, they've got to run a tight ship, and regardless of your feelings about IFAs and things like that, they've got to run a tight ship. It's a private business. I understand they've got to make money. We understand that, but you know, their costs are going up. Yeah, so am I.
But however, I mean, I think we have to look at it, you know, from the basic level, Phil. With no foster carers, they have no business.
And that's it. And I think they forget that at times, don't they? It's like just completely derogatory and ignoring your workforce. And I think that, but the thing is, the problem is, isn't it, to some degrees, they feel like they can.
Yeah.
And that,
Well,
and
they can. Well, they don't feel that they can. They know they can, and I think this is why there's this huge, defense against us having any kind of status. As you know, we're already workers. We have a mother of all contracts. We can only work for one organisation. We already are. People say, "Oh, it might affect the way that you love and nurture children." Well, has it affected it up until now? No, and we are workers. But I think yeah.
I've always felt, I always feel, I get quite annoyed that when somebody calls me a worker, because it's like, no, I'm not, because I don't have any protections. I don't have any rights.
No.
I don't have any holiday pay. I don't have any sick pay. I don't have anything that would qualify.
Don't have protection in whistleblowing, which is massive for the allegations.
Yeah, and I also feel that I've always felt like it's the Bossman ruling in football, where many years ago, where there was a famous case where a footballer was tied to a contract and he couldn't practice anywhere else, and he was completely tied in by it, and he ended up taking UEFA to think. And now people, when their contracts change, you can move on, and it's like you feel trapped as a foster care. You can't just
we are trapped. That's the point, because we don't own our license to practice. The local authority or agents we work for own it. Now, what an incredible hassle it is to either move, or have any kind of complaint or issue against your local authority or agency, because we don't have protection in whistleblowing. It's really dangerous. Carers are controlled and live in the shadow of allegations, even if they haven't had one or they're not in one. They aren't. People just say, oh, it's just allegations. It only happens to a few thousand a year. Well, that's a lot as it is anyway. But it destroys people's lives at the end of the day. But it's the living in the shadow of it that keeps controlled. Do you
think, I'm just following up with the question. It says it's time we weren't governed by social workers, and do you feel that's the case? But can we be dealt with in a more fair way, just like they are? And is there anything that you've really regretted saying to a social worker? Because I've had my run-ins with social workers, and I know that, and the thing is, that you're going to come off worse. You have to let it go, because you're going to lose. And before you know it, you sort of think, if I say one more thing before you know it, then I'll have an allegation thrown at me.
Absolutely. And the problem with that, Phil, is it stops you advocating properly for the children. As your years go on, you kind of start to back down a little and not make quite a fuss and think, oh, don't sweat the small stuff. And then you think, the small stuff, that's actually my child's future we're talking about here. And
Gemma's come up with a question that says, is there one thing you genuinely regret saying to a social worker?
I think I'll answer that in two parts, because one's in public and one is not in public, and as a foster carer. So one is as a foster carer and one is as a campaigner, I guess. As a foster carer, many moons ago, and it's what really led me into doing what I do now. I had a child that was in a really heightened state in the house. I consider myself a trauma-informed therapeutic carer. My background is as a psychotherapist, specialising in adolescents with some like 10,000 children, in hours of practice. Now, I couldn't de-escalate the situation with any kind of tools or relationship or whatever with that child at that time. She wanted to go home and see mum. They weren't letting her, and she was red mist. And I tried, and then I had something thrown at me, which hurt. And then I tried to soothe again and say, shall we, and anyway, nothing was working. And I just ran out of the house. Because like all foster carers, at some point, you're a human being, you just go, oh, I can't do it. What's going on, And I literally went down to the car park, but really it was a circuit breaker. So I could take a deep breath and think, there's nothing I can do right now. Let me just remove myself from the house and let her, she was an older teenager. Let her have a moment, let her calm down, and then I'll go back in. And my social worker, I rang my social worker. I was desperate. I wanted support, basically. I wanted support. And I rang my social worker and I said, oh, hi, her name. I said, it's Sarah. And by this time I'm in tears. And she said, oh, what's the matter? What's the matter? I said, oh, honestly, I've just lost it. Which and now in the context of what you know, I lost it. So I needed her to say, oh, that's shocking, that's difficult, what's been going on, or all the rest of it. You know, that's what I needed from her, the support that she's supposed to give me. And I had used the words, I've lost it, which are what I meant is I've just run out the house, gone to the car park, need a circuit breaker until I go back in. That phrase, she's lost it, she said, oh my God, you've lost it. What have you done?
Yeah.
And I said, no, I haven't done anything. I've just come down to the car park. You know my house, I'm just in the car park. I just couldn't, nothing was working and I just lost it. And you've lost it. Right, hang on a minute. I need to get all this recorded.
Oh, it's just typical.
And that she lost it.
Yeah.
Followed me around on my records for years.
It's incredible, isn't it? I mean, I can empathise. I can empathise on a really personal level. I had a very difficult child previously who you know, I wouldn't say I lost it, but I was very close to losing it in the way that you described.
Yeah.
And it's that, and that's why you feel alone at times, you know. And so, you know, Rachel's also asked, do you feel supported by your LA? You know, when these children move on, do you feel supported by them?
So when they move on, it depends how they've moved on. I have care leavers, so I'm in a better position than a lot because I can remain in touch with 18-year-olds without any questions asked. Yeah. I've had children, only 2, that were moved on to homes when we didn't think it was a good idea, but the powers that be, I think it's about managing risk, isn't it? A lot of the time, they're not moving the children because it's better for them, but both of these were absconding. We don't like that word, it's missing, but that's the technical term, absconding. Anyway, I think that in those instances, I was blocked from speaking to those children. And
I know that feeling. It was,
yeah, you do. I know we spoke about it. It's very unhelpful. Yeah. But what was the other part of that question? It was supported.
Do you feel supported? And also sort of lending itself from Rachel's question is, do you think enough is discussed around how we feel loss when children move on? Because I know when it happened to myself and my wife, we felt like it was a bereavement. We'd suffer, and we continue to suffer when the little lad crops up in the conversations. We end up, you know, holding hands and cuddling and sort of going, he's all right, we know he's okay.
Yeah,
you know?
I don't think carers are supported in that, because either you don't care enough or you're over emotional and not doing your job properly. I mean, it is just a no-win situation. I think there are some trainings on loss and grief and everything, but they're usually done by people that don't do the job. So I think that actually the very best way is peer support in terms of this loss and grief, where people can properly understand. And I think also on your terms of, do I feel supported by my LA? I'm lucky I work for quite a good local authority, and I feel I've had 2 very good social workers, but it's not support, Phil, it's supervision.
Yeah.
I don't get supported, and what's more, I don't feel in any way, especially after the I've lost it comment, I would never again trust to actually tell anybody how I actually felt, how it's affecting my mental health. Look at your mental health over the bereavement. I can't possibly mention that I might feel depressed or anxious, or you know, it's caused me anxiety or panic attacks or anything like that. I would never ever mention any of that or reach out for any real support. I also don't feel that you get supported enough by the team around the child. They're either at each other's throats, or they're not communicating. There's not enough services available. I'm not blaming social workers necessarily. They're in a tough position too. But I personally don't know. The support that you need is not out there. How do you feel about that?
I'm going to throw this back at you, and I'm going to say, so Mockingbird's going to sort it all out, is it?
So the thing about Mockingbird, is it is it's heavily pushed by the fostering network. The reason they do that, it's their franchise, and they sell it to local authorities and agencies, and they need money to keep going.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. Secondly, up until now, luckily now the government are having a different point of view from me and the union. Up until now, the fostering network's been the only body to represent us at, you know, governmental level. I think they have a meeting with them once a month or something. Now, they then handpick, as any agency or organization do. They have a bias towards their own, you know, their own agenda. So they handpick carers to speak. Sometimes they speak even on their behalf to you know, profess the wonders of Mockingbird. Now, that doesn't reflect the rest of the country. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that Mockingbird doesn't work for some, it does. It's a tiny minority. So I think Mockingbird's in 33 out of all the 180 local authorities or whatever it is, don't quote me, and all the agencies, you know, that's a tiny majority. Mockingbird is not suitable for teenagers, and a huge number of mainstream carers do not want to be forced into being in a Mockingbird hub. They have their own peer support, they have their own way of doing things. Yeah. Carers are all, but one thing carers do have in common is this fiercely independent streak. And you know, they don't want to be made to be in Mockingbirds. The other thing about Mockingbird is just like every other situation you put together like that, you know, the politics creeps in, you know, the guy or the girl or the whichever person it is that runs the Mockingbird hub, you know, I've heard of favoritism when it comes to respite slots and, you know, sort of kind of anger at one person saying you should be fostering this way and another fostering that way. You know, some are marvelous and they do work. As I say, don't write in, everybody, don't write in. But on the whole, the majority of the carers aren't in Mockingbird. The government have been led to believe by Fostering Network that it's the panacea for everything. Yeah. Because they haven't got any other options right now. And that's why we're seeing the government to tell them these are your options and this is how you improve things.
So Caroline asks, you know, in allegations, but I think it expands out to many other things about how can the new union help? How is it different to the other two services like Fostering Network and Foster Talk? Yeah. They support us, you know, how is it different?
So it's not actually Fostering Network or Foster Talk's fault, and I'm not making fault with them. It's just the way they're contractually hired by the local authorities. So the local authorities buy them in basically, and there's a tender put out and either Fostering Network get it or Foster Talk to support carers in allegations. Now, their criteria for supporting carers in allegations is that they cannot speak in any single meeting and represent the carer in any way. They have to work closely with services and cannot take sides. They then can only have an X amount of hours that they can talk to the carer. And also the majority of these people are social workers. So if you think of all those things together, they're no more really than a Mackenzie friend. I mean, what can they do? They can just sit there and say nothing. They can't challenge outcomes. They can't challenge false information. They can't challenge opinions. They can't challenge recommendations, nothing. So the union do all of that. Basically, the union is run by people who have experience in the actual job itself, experts by experience. And in case you get caseworker. So somebody will come along and form a case for you. They'll give you a defense. They'll ask for evidence. The union is a legal organization that is approved by the government. So it has to be respected in that way. It's not just sort of another person sitting next to you going, no, you can't write that. It's the law. They have to follow the law in this respect. So local authorities and agencies are finding it difficult to make that transition. Specifically panels and panel chairs are getting up in arms about it and saying you're not allowed in the meeting, you're not allowed this. Of course the union are allowed in the meeting, they're a government approved body. But basically the local authorities and agencies have got so used to just, you're guilty until you're proven innocent, but in our case, we're never proven innocent. Even if you're not deregistered, you get a shadow over your record, and you're told to go on more training, or you have your approval rating changed, even if it's unfounded.
Yeah.
So it makes you look guilty.
Yeah.
So the answer to that is, you know, the union is quite different. I've just had a person on the phone this week, and I absolutely, not a word of a lie, said, I should have listened to you, Sarah, a year ago when we were fostering. Very outspoken person, you know, all the sort of kind of belongs to all the things where, you know, talking about things going wrong in fostering, and didn't join the union because they didn't think that it would happen to them. And I've got a saying, we've all got a saying, us in the know, we say it's all right till it isn't. And I would urge anybody to join our own government approved union. It's the National Union of Professional Foster Carers, but basically it's the Foster Carers Union. And it, you know, because you get a defense in an allegation, they're not just someone sitting there going through the process with you without saying anything.
Yeah, and as a, you know, as a former head teacher myself, I would encourage anybody within education to join a union and make sure that it's there, because like I say, it tends to come more at the capability aspect for joining a union for the educational sense, but as a fully paid up member of the National Union of Professional Foster Carers, I would completely agree. And I have to say, the couple of times that I've actually made a phone call to, you know, I've had an answer within half an hour, which has always been a great relief, because you don't want things hanging over you and your brain going round and round thinking, where do I stand here? You know, so to get those get those
and
opinions.
people can also join the Foster Wiki members area, and we have experts by experience on the end of email there, so you can always, no question is too small, so they can always do that. But with the union as well, I will be updating everybody very soon, but there's like several, it's only been going obviously since last October, I think, so, but there are several cases now that are going to tribunal. So because what it is if you join the union, you're considered a worker in the union, actually, because the judge in the court case last year in the High Court declared we were workers, and we did have a contract, and therefore we could form a union. Yeah. But what they're saying in the government, see, we're going to speak to the government about it. We want the Secretary of State for Education, Nadim Zahawi, as well, to join the meeting as well, because the judge in one of the recent tribunals has asked for him to be present at the court case, because he needs to answer for why the government haven't moved on making foster carers workers from the ruling last year, which went uncontested by them. Yeah. So there's going to be I'll do a video on it. It's quite a big stuff coming up. I've just done a video on the Foster Wiki YouTube channel on worker status, because there's so many myths and false information out there. Obviously, when people don't want you to have something, they put false information out, you know. Yeah, of course. Oh, it'll change your tax, so it'll do this, you know. It doesn't do any of that. It's a self-employed status. Yeah. Because carers are all very independent. So anyway, it's worth everybody catching up that video, because it explains it really well. And I will do some more social media and videos on specifically on this subject. In fact, I'll get the General Secretary from the union on in the next couple of weeks, and we'll talk it through on here. Yeah, I'm the same. It's like, if anybody who is, you know, I come across anybody who wants to be a foster carer, because of course when you meet people, you say, what do you do? Well, you do this, about a foster carer. They said, oh, I don't have to do all that stuff. But, you know, as they do, and they all say it's such a highly commendable thing, and, you know, oh, I could never do it, and all that sort of thing. You know, my first port of call is always say, go and look at Foster Wiki. Just look it up, Foster Wiki. It's an encyclopedia, a growing encyclopedia of information that's honest and straight and true. Don't believe the hype. Don't believe the adverts that you see. Go to Foster Wiki, and it'll give you what you sort of need to see. You alluded to you know, IFAs and different ways of looking at it. And Nikki's asked a question about IFAs here, and she's saying, why are the payments for IFAs so much greater than local authorities? Yeah, it's an interesting one, that, isn't it? I saw that came up on social media. The answer is, I suppose, the very obvious answer is they make more profit out of it, but so that they can pay carers more. they don't, not all carers get paid more in an IFA as opposed to local authority. For instance, in my local authority at level 3, you get paid more than the agencies, but the local authorities have different ways of paying. So the local authorities give out the children's allowance to everybody, but it's separated from what's called skills fees. And that's done differently in every single, local authority around the country. Nothing's streamlined or the same.
Should it be centralised?
This is my idea. I think, because again, I like that idea of independence and choosing. I think what we should do is have this central licensing body, which also keeps a tab on your experience, your specializations, your qualifications. I'm also at the moment, we're doing a standardized education pathway for foster carers, and perhaps you and I can do another video and speak about that, because it's in the early stages. But that will become more of a pathway for carers to, start and then finish up at degree level if they want, which may answer the other question about why are social workers being in charge of us. Maybe we can be in charge of ourselves, but that's a completely new conversation. But I think that the other thing with local authorities is, I've been saying to my local authority, they have trouble recruiting all the time, stop paying level 1, the entry level at fostering, at less than half the price of any agency in this area. How are you going to? This is not because people foster for the money, but because in this today's socio-economic landscape, we all need money to survive. And such a high percentage of foster carers, it's their main job. They can't do other work, because they might be looking after babies or teenagers that are neat, or they have to just at a click of a finger be at a meeting or at school or whatever, it's not the job, single carers, So people need the money to because you need money to pay the bills. So in local authorities, they pay this amount. And I said to my local authorities 10 years ago, what are you doing? You say you can't recruit. Well, why would people come and foster on a child's allowance a week when they work?
I've seen adverts now on the front pages of local authorities' websites saying we will match your IFA. They will match the payments.
I just hope that they're matching them for the existing carers that are in there, because I do find that's rather a kick in the teeth. But if you don't pay carers properly, first of all, they won't have the incentive to improve or do education or do a great job, because they'll be so worried about their finances. We're just doing a survey, look out for it, everybody, a survey on the cost of living crisis, and we're going to put that out and hope we get that. We want to take that to government. They love data, so I'm going to put the survey out. But the other thing about the IFAs is that they pay one lump sum. They don't differentiate between child's allowance and your skills fees. So some local authorities, but literally some local authorities are paying such a pittance. I just wonder how anybody can possibly manage to do it. And it's so short-sighted, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I mean, we all know the outcomes for children are much improved if they are in foster care. And so, money can be a dirty subject, but at the end of the day, people have bills to pay, costs are going up. And if you're going to make such a massive commitment to help the most traumatized and vulnerable children in society, I call them extraordinary, Sarah, because every single one of them that I've had the honor of looking after within my house has been extraordinary. Because I know that if what has happened to them would have happened to me, I'd have collapsed. I wouldn't have made it through. And these kids keep going. They keep themselves moving forward.
They do.
They're so resilient and so tough. But it leads me on to my last one that comes from Patricia. And it is a bit of a more personal one. And she says, how can we better support foster carers' own children around the behaviours of foster children and regarding loss? When that foster child moves on, a £10 gift voucher on their birthday doesn't really quite cut it.
Do you know what? This is a massive topic, but it's also one of the topics that's swept under the carpet. Whenever you see the fostering adverts or the little videos on birth children, all you get is these birth children saying, you know, oh, it's, you know, expanded my life out. I've understood how to love others, and others aren't as well off as me, and it's helped me do this, and all this sort of incredible praise for their role of child in birth child. I can tell you now that a lot of birth children are really badly affected. And I can also tell you that the support for them is virtually nil. And it's because social services, and just like our foster carers' own mental health, they want to just put their ear, no, la, 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 this problem doesn't exist. And they also pay no attention or respect or duty of care or anything to birth children. Quite honestly, as far as they're concerned, they rarely exist.
Yeah.
And I know my own child was a lot older when we started fostering, and I know she had many, but it wasn't just the loss, but there were lots of other very difficult issues. Like in our situation, our foster children were getting £70 a week pocket money.
Wow.
Between their EMA from school and the allowance we have to give them at 16, £70 a week, and it is pocket money because every other need is thing. She was getting £5 a week and having to work down the local fish restaurant and coming home stinking of fish every night that she'd been washing up. And she just couldn't see how that was fair. So, but then I'd say to her, well, these children have been through this and you haven't, you've had, but so you have to work with your own children to help them understand. Plus also with birth children, the foster children take up so much of mum and dad's or mum's or dad's time. And the meetings and the things that go on in their own homes, they have to live with that all the time, social workers turning up, as I say, meetings going on, and the carer is having to, basically it's a full-time job fostering. So birth children often do get the rough end of the deal.
Yeah.
As far as it's interesting, I was just talking to someone yesterday about managing that loss as well. Because this is another thing, it's a page going up on Foster Wiki very shortly called Keeping Connected, and it goes back to what you and I were talking about the other day. But it's not just keeping connected for the foster children for their attachment issues and their own mental health, keeping these attachments to people that they've loved very much, but it's also the siblings, the birth children, who felt like brothers and sisters to them. So those two, the birth child that felt that they had a new brother or sister, and the child that's moved on, the grief between those two is massive as well, and completely swept under the carpet. And they continue to not keep foster carers connected where appropriate with these children, and they're terribly important in the children's lives and vice versa, and it is not happening, and it has to start happening.
When they say that they work on research based, Zahawi's very hot on saying that we work on research based evidence. When you have things like Keep Connected and it is dropped immediately, it is completely ignored. And it's very much the policy is this this placement has broken down. That is it. Goodbye. And that can be, and it's just absolute nonsense. I would argue it is bordering on abuse, because though a placement may have broken down, there is still a connection, and that as long as that connection is of a positive nature, it's not creating problems. That connection should absolutely carry on, and it's
crucial. And it's crucial.
And to my mind, it is abusive. It's barbaric that you would do this to a child, a vulnerable child who has so many traumas and difficulties, that when something positive has happened, even though that placement has broken down, you would just cut them off for it. I just think it's.
I know, and I think also I'm going to say it. The reasons that it doesn't happen are rarely anything to do with the child at all and their relationship. They happen because of the blame culture we live in. They happen because of sort of control issues of foster carers, of not wanting children to then speak to their carers if something's been said about them that hasn't been said. It's really, really really inappropriate reasons why it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Now, the other problem with that, of course, is they hold the final card, don't they? Because all they turn around to you and say it's not in the interests of the child. Well, you know, many of us know that that's nonsense as well. So it's crucially important that we are able to stay in touch with those children, as you know. Yeah,
indeed. Thank you, Sarah. Our time is up. We have struggled through the questions. I hope that they've been of use for everybody who's listening to this particular broadcast. It's been great to sit on the other seat for a change, instead of having to think of the answers, actually dole out the questions for once. So it's been good fun to do that sort of thing. Sarah, anything that you just want to wrap up with before we finish?
No, I think as with every fostering conversation, you could go on for a country mile, and perhaps we could do another one of these soon, and people might be listening now and think of the questions they'd like to ask, and perhaps you and I could do a video on the standardized education pathway soon, and I'll ask you a few more questions. It's a never-ending source of, as we know, Phil, from hours of chat on the phone.
The battles are still there to be fought, and
they are.
But progress is being made, you know, and that's the thing. We can keep hammering on that door, and one day it will be better. Because it won't be those in power that make that change it. It'll be us. It'll be foster carers and foster carers coming together and saying no more, and having the strength to say, right, this needs to change, and it's about empowering those foster carers to have that courage to stand up for what they believe is right and what's right for the children in their care, and we'll get there. I believe we'll get there.
Yeah, I believe we will. And I'd just like to say goodbye to everybody, and you know, join the campaigns, have your voice heard, and let's all speak out, you know, because at the end of the day, happy, secure and protected carers you know, foster happy, secure and protected children.
And that, Mr. Zahawi, is how you will end up with 9,000 more foster carers. Not by putting out little adverts that say, oh, if you've got a spare room, you can be foster carers. You've got to look at it differently, and I hope they do. Thanks for your time, Sarah. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Bye. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.